We're ready to go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for joining us for this SSP industry breakout session. Today we'll be talking about dimensions and specifically bringing data into focus. So what we'll cover today, we'll do some introductions so you know who's talking to you. We'll do a little bit of an overview of Dimensions 101 for those that don't know about it or haven't seen it in a while. Spend most of our time talking about our new product strategy around an infrastructure supporting modules and apps. Then I will show lots of examples of different things you can do in those modules and apps, and that's the Everything Everywhere All at Once session. And then we'll wrap up with Q&A. So I'm Tyler Ruse, Director of Publisher Solutions at Digital Science. Been here just over 7 years, and I do a lot of work with publishers around how to use our data and how to use our tools to get the most value out of them. I do have prior experience in the sort of intersection of technology and publishing with Ingram, R. Donnelley, and OCLC.
All right, and let's see. Can everybody hear me? Okay, so I think I do know a lot of people in this room. If I don't know you, my name is Kathy Holland. I'm a Director of Global Publisher Business Development at Digital Science. Been there just over 7 years at this point. And on a day-to-day basis, I work with publishers worldwide, helping them solve a number of challenges. And I do have a lot of publishing industry experience. Prior to Digital Science, I was with AAAS in Science for 12 years, where I worked in their subscription licensing department. So good background for diving into the last 7-year role, I guess, yeah.
All right, awesome. So a little bit about Dimensions, again, for those that don't know about it or haven't seen it in a while. It is a research lifecycle database that we've developed that brings together more than 400 million documents across publications, clinical trials, patents, policy documents, research grants, and data sets, that's supplementary data. And essentially, we've built this all into one product so you can run a variety of different analytics and get some actionable data across all of the landscape of these different items, but then also interrogate and explore the connections between all of the different documents and dimensions as well. So you can see all those arrows in between really to understand how many different links we've found between all of these different components in the scholarly research lifecycle. It's important to point out we do a lot of enrichment to this data as well. Spend a lot of time in technology and investment around disambiguation. So when you're doing analytics and dimensions, you know what a research institution is, you know what a particular researcher is, you know who an author is, and you know who a funder is. And we've done all that cleanup work ahead of time to really make that actionable. We've also extracted concepts or keywords from all the documents and dimensions, which make concept analysis really interesting. We'll show a little bit more about that today. And then we also do a lot of research classification. So in Dimensions, everything is classified against a variety of different taxonomies, from classical subject areas to things like the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We do package Dimensions in 4 sort of broad product categories that we sell to publishers. The first is analytics. That's a web-based application, very widely used and widely adopted. It's easy to use. There's no specialized knowledge required. It's basically for anybody to be able to get value out of the Dimensions data. But we also offer an API that allows you to integrate Dimensions into things like manuscript workflow systems and submission systems, so you can really leverage the data there. We also make the entirety of the Dimensions data available in the Google Cloud platform via Google BigQuery, so you can actually develop custom dashboards that take Dimensions data and couple it with your own proprietary data to develop your own custom reporting and infrastructure. Then today we'll be talking about sort of our future product strategy, which is really developing new features around modules and apps that extend the functionality of the Dimensions data and really give users the power to design their own dashboards and publish their own dashboards. Okay, so if we talk about sort of the layers of data we've got in Dimensions, the bottom layer there is really the base. Essentially, it's the data that we've got in Dimensions, all of those hexagons I showed, sort of really building out that foundation. And then on top of that, the analytics platform that I talked about. In the middle section there, we do have modules, things that you might be already aware of, like our Reviewer Finder, our API, or Google BigQuery access. Today, we'll be talking a lot about the Dimensions apps, so thinking about things like custom dashboards around landscape and discovery and perspectives and insights. And then at the very top, it is important to point out that we do have a solutions business that provides custom software development, custom training, et cetera, on top of all these services. Okay, one of the things that we wanted to do with this product strategy around the modules and apps was actually develop it into an easy to use and already used interface. So inside of Dimensions Analytics, what we're doing is we're extending the different features you can have by developing modules and apps so that you can access things like the landscape and discovery dashboard, what we'll talk about today, or things like our perspective and insights dashboard. So you don't have to have different applications, different tools, different services to be able to integrate with these things.
So I think, Tyler, before we move on, I've got my first kind of thought. I know a lot of people in the audience are here because they either already have dimensions or they're thinking about it. And one question that immediately pops into my mind is all the nice apps in the box there that you could potentially access. Which one of those come with a standard dimensions analytics subscription versus something additional?
Yeah, great question. So any Dimensions Analytics subscriber will have access to the Reviewer Finder app that's at the very top there. It allows you to really identify and isolate potential reviewer candidates based on an input of a manuscript or an abstract. But the rest of those are either separately bundled or separately packaged, or in some cases in beta dashboards and modules and apps that we're currently in development. And those are add-on packages to the Dimensions Analytics subscription.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's kick it off by talking about landscape and discovery. This is one of those apps that we've developed leveraging Dimensions data. One of the biggest things we heard from customers was, I would like to be able to develop a standalone dashboard or a standalone report, either on a topical area, a research institution, a researcher, or a publisher or a journal that I can then give to somebody, and they don't have to learn how to use Dimensions. They don't have to have access to the Dimensions. They can simply use the dashboard that is very focused on their specific use case. The example here is on a topical area on blockchain, but essentially what you could do is publish any one of these landscape and discovery dashboards and give it to the stakeholder who's interested in that area, and they don't have to go in and navigate through Dimensions and do different things. So every time they access this dashboard, it's going to have the refreshed, latest and greatest data that Dimensions would have in it, and they don't have to do anything but click refresh.
And I think to kind of think about that from almost, because I'm not necessarily super technical, and from a non-technical point of view, when I talk with publishers on a day-to-day basis, one thing they ask me, they're like, what's the easiest and best ways to get actionable insights from the Dimensions data? And honestly, we're at the point where building a dashboard like this will do just that. Like Tyler said, you can have that kind of at the click of a button, refresh data that gives you what you need in order to do your day-to-day job. And a lot of these dashboards are customizable because any organization is going to have, something a little bit different that's important to them, or another KPI that they're trying to hit. It's not going to be a one-for-one. And when you have something like this in place, you can, like I said, just click a button. You don't have to go to a data analyst and have all those reports pulled and then put together. It's just there for you. So
correct. Easy to publish it once, and everybody can use it as many times as they need. So for the purposes of today, I created a dashboard on the area of nuclear fusion. This is one example of what you might make a dashboard out of for this landscape and discovery. I picked a topical area that was very relevant. And what you can see then is that you've got views within this dashboard around just general overviews, who's doing the research, who are the key players, what types of impact do the grants and the publications related to this topical area have. And in this dashboard, there's a whole series of different visualizations which really give you a lot of insights into that. So for example, one of the main sort of things that we've been asked from publishers over time is, how do we better leverage all of those concepts you're pulling out of Dimensions documents and really do more concept analysis around those? Because we use them for a variety of different things, but we don't necessarily make them available to every subscriber to really get access to in the Dimensions Analytics product. So what we want to do is build visualizations like this one into this dashboard. So what I'm looking at is basically all of the co-occurring concepts along with nuclear fusion in the corpus of data in Dimensions, so that you can really see rising topics. What are the best and largest areas that are subfields of a particular area, things that you might want to focus on for a special issue, for a new journal, for any sort of editorial decision you've got in the area around nuclear fusion in this case, but really understand sort of what's happening in that field through concept analysis.
And I think kind of to further Tyler's point, I love this particular visualization for a few reasons. I mean, first of all, I'm just a very visual person in general, and this is very easy to look at, and it's fun and it's colorful. The second thing I think about is this is really kind of an upgraded version of a word cloud. How many people have used a word cloud in the past couple of years? Exactly. So this is a little bit different, but a similar thing. And what you can really do with this information is you can start to see kind of trends. And so many publishers that I talk with are really interested in that kind of trend analysis. And this is one way to do it, because you've got this at a glance view. And then on top of that, you can drill down into each of these segments. It's very kind of clickable and live. And that type of trend analysis has applications across many publishing departments, not just one. A lot of people use this type of data.
Yeah, and to reinforce this sort of interactivity, it's not easy to do in a format like this, but essentially if you clicked on that magnetic field section, it would then open up all of the years of publication data we have around that particular concept. You could then click on one of those years and you could get a report, a downloadable report of every publication that had the concept of magnetic fields related to it. And you could use that to understand what journals they were published in. You could use that to understand how many citations they had received over the last 12 months. So lots more analysis by being interactive within this concept structure.
Yeah.
Okay, this is another sort of response to things that we hear from customers all the time, which is how can I use Dimensions data? Because you have all of this data about researchers and their authorship. How can we use that data to really diversify our authorship pool and how we get new authors in? So this visualization I think is really cool because essentially what it shows is a geographic diversity of authors in the area of nuclear fusion, giving you a sense and scale of number of publications, geography of the researcher, and how many citations those publications have received. So if you're really looking to diversify and get new authorship in for your nuclear fusion based journal, and you were really looking at growing that in Asia, you can look at the blue colored dots on this field really easily, and you'll identify individuals within Dimensions that have lots of publications and lots of citations in that field and where their geographic location is. Okay, so again, as we talk about different landscape and discovery dashboards you can create using this app, another lens might be looking through the lens of a particular journal. So in this case, instead of using nuclear fusion as my input, I use PLOS One. And so for this purpose, we were really trying to serve a need, which is around a journal level report. So that could be an annual or a quarterly report for the editorial board or for the editor in chief, really giving them a snapshot of everything Dimensions can tell them about that particular journal for a given time frame. And again, they don't have to go into Dimensions and navigate and do searches and click on a bunch of things and say, okay, I think about my data. Maybe I need to export this to Excel and do a pivot table and get the right chart. We really wanted to surface all that data, give lots of rich visualization. So this can be a standalone journal level report. One of the things that's really cool about this is that we've surfaced citations information to that particular journal. So it's really easy to see who cited your journal and what institution are they affiliated with. So that's interesting in itself. But then we've also showed citing organizations that have cited your publications from a patent. So instead of just traditional academic citations, here you've got citing patents, and here you've got citing clinical trials. So you can really easily see that broad impact, citations across all of those different documents to your journal.
And I think, you know, from another perspective, I mean, these types of charts are really important and can really help a business operate in the way they want to. Because as you start to drill into this data, it can really help inform strategy. And just kind of off the top of my head, I can think of two specific areas. First of all, if you're in editorial or if you're on the marketing side, you can start to use some of this data to uncover gaps in publication reach. You know, maybe you thought that the University of Chicago was, you know, citing something a lot more than they are, or, you know, there's just a number of ways you can slice it up to see that. And then also if, you know, you're in sales and you're selling kind of maybe APC packages or institutional licenses, what you can start to do is add this kind of tool to your data-driven sales approach, where you can take it, you know, some of it to your customers, and you can say, okay, these are the numbers behind why you're, you know, getting an institutional subscription. You have this many citations from us. You have this many patent citations. You have this many clinical trial citations. And that's really, really powerful data that you can talk about. And in case anybody was wondering, you are not limited to the top 50 like you see here. You can go all the way down. Just for the purposes of this presentation, we thought we'd start there.
Yeah, and again, this is drillable. So if you're really interested in seeing what all of the citing patents were to the from the University of California system, you could click there and you could do an entire download of all of the data and dimensions on the individual publication level. So you can really sort of, again, drill down as deep as you really want to. And sort of pivoting off this notion of an institutional dashboard, institutional report, you can set up a landscape and discovery dashboard for an institution. So instead of thinking of a journal or a subject area, you can look at an institution. It can be more than one institution. It could be a whole consortia. But essentially what you could do is further analysis to see what you can learn about that particular institution based on the data and dimensions. This visualization is showing me essentially where the University of Oregon's funding maps out in similar organizations. So you can sort of see how much time and energy do you need to put into your work selling into the University of Oregon compared to like institutions? You see there a little further there, the green bubble down in the bottom left there, but a little underfunded compared to some similar organizations. And if we continue that theme, then you can drill into that institutional level to see exactly what researchers at that particular institution are citing your publications. So you can really, again, use this as an institutional sales tool, give it to your teams that are negotiating transformative agreements, or they are negotiating subscription renewals. Those teams are not going to be interested in pulling a bunch of data and massaging it. They would love to have a ready to go list of the institutions that they're responsible for to be able to run this report on their monthly call or their quarterly meetings. Okay, we're going to pivot a little bit and talk about Dimension's research integrity, which is essentially the integration of Repeta, which some of you might know as a portfolio company that Digital Science invested in several years ago. Their technology integrates full text manuscripts and publications, looking for things we call trust markers. Those are signs of quality authorship, reproducibility, and transparency. So really looking for indicators in each document, each manuscript, each publication, looking to see if there are certain things they can find, these trust markers that would lead you to believe that this might be a trustworthy or a reproducible or a transparent publication.
And I think to kind of comment a little bit more on what Tyler mentioned, over the past 2 years, I've been doing a lot of work with that team specifically, and also publishers, and really thinking about kind of the practical applications in publishing. And I can definitely tell you what I've seen. And the first thing is using an API really upstream as part of the submission process is quite important and useful. And I see 2 ways that it could really be leveraged. The first is just taking a look at a paper as it comes in the door for those components that signal good research integrity. Things like ethical availability statements, data availability statements, many other things that fall under those lists of reporting guidelines. Some of them might be built, some of them are to be built. But what that does is that really saves editors time. So an editor doesn't have to manually go through and look for some of those components. And that is what editors are doing today for certain things. So really that automation. And then the second way this can be used is for authorship. I think everybody in this room has probably talked about, heard about it, seen 100 marketing emails about it, just the challenges with author integrity today. And so we kind of look at basically our author networks to kind of flag things during the submission process that might need to be more closely scrutinized because of a few reasons. And I think this actually takes you nicely into the next slide, where we have an integration kind of throughout the submission process that Tyler's going to talk about a little bit.
Oh. Yeah, so
Yeah.
one of the first things we learned and we heard was, how do we take this technology, integrate it into the submission workflow so that we can use this technology to help scale submission evaluation, help editors look for things that are highly scalable via technology. And so we actually have an active integration via an API for this technology into Aries Editorial Manager. So if it's enabled and you are a journal editor working in Editorial Manager, you can actually receive a report covering all of the presence or lack of presence of those trust markers in any submission, and really flag those early in the process before you spend much more editorial analysis time. So that, you don't necessarily kick things out of workflow and say, this doesn't have a data availability statement, so I don't want to publish it. But you can certainly flag that and say, does this meet the journal guidelines that I've got in place that is requiring a data availability statement or a data repository location? So it just gives you better tools to, again, scale some of those things, make life easier on your editorial staff. And that's fully integrated into Editorial Manager. So if you want to learn more about that, you can certainly talk to us, but you can talk to your client services person at Aries as well. They'll be able to talk you through how that works and how an editor doesn't have to leave workflow to get a report around the presence of those trust markers in a submission. Okay, and the last thing we'll talk about here today is the development we're doing around another app that is really digging into the Dimension's research integrity data we have, because we know there's a need to really look at a broad landscape around the presence of those trust markers in publications. So we're building a dashboard that's going to include visualizations around the changes over time in the presence of those trust markers for certain subject areas. Is it going down and going up in clinical sciences, but staying flat in chemical sciences? Is it, changing over time based on that? You could look through a journal. Is this journal improving, and how many of those trust markers are present in the articles that it's publishing? You could look at a publisher. You could do cross-publisher analysis, really sort of see the state of the presence of those trust markers across a wide corpus of publications data to, again, see where those trends are going and see maybe where you are today and where you want to be in the future.
And I really think with this app, the word that comes to mind for me is benchmarking. And I think when you think about anything in this landscape, or sometimes even your own personal thought, you want to benchmark, and you usually start with yourself. You say, where am I today? Where do I want to be in terms of research integrity? And you've got the data kind of in an easy view, and then you can go from there.
Yeah, and I would say further to the product roadmap around Dimensions research integrity, that first slide I showed that had a whole bunch of different elements we're looking for, those trust markers. We are continually developing new trust markers to find and enhancing the ones that we have, so we can drill further into authorship and understand the history of authorship and find bad actors. We can drill further into new policies around data availability and reproducibility. So those are constantly being added to, and that's really just the evolution of the product in addition to the reporting layer you're seeing here. So with that, hopefully you saw something that was interesting that you didn't know or that sort of piques your interest. We'll be here all week. We have a booth over in the exhibit area. More than happy to take questions now, but also after this conversation, happy to show some of these dashboards real time, take a look at your subject area, your journal, whatever you'd like to see, show you how easy they are to publish, and give you a flavor of sort of where that's going directionally.
All right, great. Well, so I think with 5 minutes remaining, we can now open the floor for questions. I know there's a microphone over there, which can be utilized. And then also our booth number is 410 at the very back, kind of near the large round tables where everybody eats, if you want to come find us. So we have that as well. So what questions do we have? Don't all jump at once. Oh.
That's okay.
I love the honesty.
No, it's cross-discipline. So we've got plenty of data in around social sciences and humanities, as well as STM. Again, that crosses all of the data and dimensions as well. So we've got grants data that really focuses on a wide coverage of all of the different subject areas, as well as publications and everything else. And then you can kind of see things like patents, things like policy documents, things like clinical trials. They're a little bit more specific to subject areas, but that's why policy documents are there, because that's a little bit more focused on humanities and social sciences.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have a subscription package that gets you access to all of the Dimensions data on Google BigQuery, and then you use your own Google account to query as much of that as you like and pull that into any report in your own infrastructure using Power BI or Tableau or whatever your visualization tools are. But that's a standalone subscription that sort of fits on that product scale of ours. So it's something we could certainly talk about what that subscription looks like, but it is a standalone subscription.
No. Yes.
In general, how would you position Dimensions as the
Oh.
Turn off the record button.
Yeah, seriously.
No, that's a very good question. I mean, we've actually done quite a bit of work around differentiations. Clearly, our focus has been very broadly on inclusion. So we don't curate or exclude journals unless they're predatory, but we don't make those decisions. We provide filtering tools for you to be able to say, I'm not interested in preprints for this one, or I'm not interested in publications that are only a year old. So we give you those tools to sort of make those decisions. So inclusivity is one thing. And then the focus on individual documents as well. We think of things more at the individual publication level, including subject classification, citation counting, impact counting, more so than rolling it up to a journal and making that the basis of what we do.
Yes.
Yeah, they do. So I would say that generally speaking, the directions we take dimensions get lots of input from academic research institutions, governments, funders, corporate, and the publishing segment. So they all kind of factor in, and we make decisions based on the input from all of those organizations. And we've actually developed a sort of a partnership program with a variety of different, sort of constituents there to give us the right direction that we can take.
All right, let's see. Got 1 minute left. Any other burning questions for anybody?
We do.
Yes.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of qualifications there. Those books do need to have DOI represented in Crossref rather than just an ISBN. But we take in full data feeds from Crossref on book chapters and monographs and edited books. And we do the same thing when we work with publishers. We take in all of the book data we can.
Okay. I think with that, I think we can wrap it up. And like I said, we're at booth 410. If you have any more questions, we're happy to chat with you.
Thanks, everyone.